Hi everyone, Daljeet Peterson here from astrolab21.com, and in this video we're going to be talking about Libra season 2021. And as usual, we're going to take a look at the month ahead, take a look at the chart, see what the astrological weather has in store for us for the month to come. And as usual, looking at my notes here, a lot of interesting configurations in the sky this month, as there seems to have been every month, every season this year. Just an indication of the really sort of intense and transformational times that we're living through right now. And of course, a lot of understanding can be garnered from taking a look at the sky, taking a look at the planets and the configurations, and giving us a sense of what is trying to be expressed and constellated for us during this time, relating it back to our own charts, understanding ourselves, our place in the world, understanding these cycles that take place over the course of the year and over the course of many years in terms of some of these cycles, and really aligning our own personality and our own intentions with some of these planetary cycles can really help us to be much more well-oriented, I guess I would say, to the world. I think that's a real blessing. That is the blessing of astrology, and it's why I practice it, and it's why I love sharing this information with you guys out there, because I think it's super helpful. So as usual, we'll talk about the season in general, as we like to do with these videos, get a sense of why we talk about these different seasons, astrological seasons, these 12 months as the sun moves through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, and it sets the solar year, because there's something we can learn about this seasonal progression. It'll help us understand how we should really be orienting ourselves to the world and to our environment during these particular times of the year, and then taking it into a more specific context and looking at the particular configurations in the chart for this year and this particular season. But before we jump in, I want to just do some housekeeping, do a little self-promotion here, and just remind you guys always that astrolab21.com is my website. I archive all the videos there. I have some articles that I've written over the past year, the Blueprint of the Soul and the Collective Soul series, really good articles that normally are behind a paywall on Medium, where I do write for that website, but I do like to keep a couple of the series here because I think they're super helpful and insightful. Also, you can go to the store page, the Book a Reading, where you can get a reading from me directly. Blueprint of the Soul reading. I have various different types of readings. I have a solar return for your birthday. I do a new soul reading for those who are new parents and are bringing a new soul into the world. Great insight into what we can expect from that little guy or gal. I do a special reading for teenagers trying to figure themselves out at that very critical time in their life. First Saturn return, I've done a few of those recently. Really interesting to help those. If you're in your mid-20s, about to turn 28 or 29, great time to get a reading to help you really set the compass for your life. I've got the midlife crisis reading. If you're in your early 40s, there's some real insights to be garnered. It's your Uranian opposition, often a great time to get a reading. And then the golden years, for those who have already looking at retirement, another good time to check the charts, if you will. As always, I have the Patreon page. Got 3 different member levels there with some different rewards. Just starting out, only have a handful of members, but there's a few of you who have signed up for that Mars membership, which we've been doing these monthly AMAs, sort of an Ask Me Anything on the first Saturday of every month. And it's been really fun getting to know some of you guys on a one-on-one basis. So yeah, for early adopters out there, great chance to just pick my brain on, we talk about your own chart, we talk about what's going on in the skies that month, and really cool, because trying to develop a little community here around Astrolab. Oh, and one other thing, the Ko-fi.com, which is another way of just saying thank you. If you really like the videos that I'm doing and if they're helpful, buy me a cup of coffee. It's $3, and a great way to show your support. And I am, I'm a coffee fanatic, so I love Nespresso. That's one of my guilty pleasures. So support my coffee habit if you want to. So that out of the way, now we can talk about Libra season 2021. Of course, This is always a big time. Whenever we have a cardinal sign, as Libra is, cardinal air, it means that we are initiating one of the 4 major transitions, seasonal shifts that occur throughout the year, which are the solstices and the equinoxes. So when Libra season comes around, we are entering into the autumnal equinox, the fall equinox, which is a day 1 or twice a year on the spring and fall equinox. The days are of equal length, right? So since that peak of summer at the summer solstice back in June at Cancer season, which was when it had the longest day and shortest nights, now the days have been getting progressively shorter and we're of equal length, that midpoint in between summer and winter. And when we get to the winter solstice in Capricorn season in 3 months' time, we will have the shortest days and longest nights. So the equinoxes and the solstices have always been traditionally seen as like gateways or portals. Certainly our ancestors would celebrate and would have very particular rituals designed for these 4 very special times of the year. Because essentially it seems that the veil is thinner at this time. There's something about our ability to get a much more deeper insight into our own spiritual progress, into our connection and relationship to the earth, to our environment. You know, we are human beings. We are an emergent property of this planet. And though we are spiritual beings, we are also in each lifetime getting this chance to be ensouled, to be embodied in this experience, to have these earthly experiences. And so these are really powerful times of the year. And the solstices and the equinoxes are good times to sort of really calibrate our own annual cycles and to set intentions and rituals at this time. So we'll get into some of that, but that's, one of the things we think about as we consider shifting from what we've just finished as Virgo season, right? A mutable earth sign. It's the last of the 3-phase cycle of summer. So we're mutating from summer and initiating fall with Libra, air, cardinal energy. So it's usually the time around this time, Virgo being the ruler of the harvest, and this is the period where we're sort of reaping what we've sowed over the course of spring and into summer, right? When we come from such, a very strong agricultural tradition, a lot of our seasonal cycle was centered around the agriculture cycle. And although we've become somewhat disconnected from that in our modern world where, we just go get our food at the grocery store, we're a little disconnected from our source of our food. Those of us who do still have like vegetable gardens and grow our own food still get that connection to this seasonal cycle, which is why having a garden is such a good way to connect yourself to the earth and to these cycles that are so important. So, that's sort of the bigger picture of what's going on in terms of the shift from Virgo into Libra, right? So we're initiating this new cycle. And as I'm recording this today, it's Monday the 20th, so 2 days before the start of Libra season. But as I was writing my notes this morning and working on the article for Libra season that I'm publishing on Medium, where I publish all my writing, I get up pretty early in the morning, pre-dawn, and as I looked out my window here in the western skies over Los Angeles, that Pisces full moon was setting in the sky. It was really beautiful, gorgeous, so inspirational this morning to write under the light of that Pisces full moon. And I really feel like that's kind of putting a punctuation on the end, of Virgo season this year, right? Because Virgo's in its very late degrees. It's about 27, 28 degrees right now, where it's opposing the sun in Pisces. So we're getting this very intense Pisces moon, and it also happens to be in conjunction with Neptune, which has been transiting through Pisces as well. So it's giving it this real intensity of fullness of emotion, it's a very spiritual full moon, right? Whenever we have Pisces energy and Neptune in its own sign sort of charging this full moon with its own sort of, transcendental impulse, right? When we think about Neptune, we think about its connection to source, to the oceanic oneness of all that is. That's Neptune energy. So when you get the moon and Neptune together in Pisces, particularly a full moon, it's really powerful. So, of course, there's the light and the shadow side of all these configurations, as we always talk about. So there's always, with a configuration like this, a susceptibility to be overindulgent, right? Pisces, Neptune can really get carried away, with imbibing in the transcendental nature of drugs and alcohol, for instance. We may get carried away with that desire to just get lost in those feelings of emerging into the oneness, sort of letting go, dropping our resistance, dropping all of our boundaries, and just dissolving into that ecstasy, really. I mean, this is an ecstatic type of full moon energy. It's a really visceral and very spiritual signification, really. So chance to, really put a nice punctuating point on Virgo season and setting us up for this Libra season. And we're going to see Neptune gets triggered here in a couple of different ways over the course of this month. So let's jump into the chart and start to just get a look at what's going on. What's the astrological weather forecast? And I've got my notes here with me, so hopefully we'll get through these quickly and we won't miss anything. So here we've got the chart up for September 22nd. It's going to be about, right around noontime here on the West Coast in California. We'll see that the sun will make its ingression into the sign of Libra here at 0 degrees. And the first thing I want to note is that, the sun is moving in a conjunction with Mars in Libra. So right away we're going to get this pretty powerful configuration that I want to demonstrate here for you with this ingression into Libra, right? So of course, this is, when you get Sun and Mars together, pretty powerful, energetic type of configuration. Now, even though when we think about Mars in Libra, Libra's the sign of Mars's detriment, right? Because it's the opposite sign of its own sign, Aries. So Mars not particularly fond of Libra. It can be a challenging time for that Mars energy. But despite that fact, I feel that, whenever you have Sun, Mars together, there's power there. This is energy for action, for individual expression. And so because we have this configuration in Libra, lots of energy for our relationships of all kinds, whether there are personal one-on-one, right, their intimate relationships, our partnerships, all relationships are going to be energized during the course, particularly the first, first week of this Libra season that we're about to begin. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that it's not just this conjunction, but this conjunction of Mars and the Sun is forming a grand trine. We have a grand air trine to kick off Libra season. And this is going to bring in the energy of this retrograde Saturn in Aquarius, as well as the North Node that's been moving through Gemini all year. So really great air trine, some really intense sort of mental, intellectual energy, the power for really strong communication, particularly as it relates to relationships, right? This relational energy is getting energized from Saturn here in Aquarius, and then it's retrograde. And, normally we talk about configurations that involve Saturn. We often talk about the negative or the downsides to Saturn, right? It can be limiting. It can be times of setback and loss and suffering or there's the burden of duty and responsibility. And that's always part of the character of Saturn. But when it gets aspected in this way in a trine, it's our chance, I would say, to get on the good side of Saturn. Here's an opportunity to tap into Saturn's much more structured and productive side, right? Saturn is really just it really is of service. It doesn't want to be the pain in the ass that we often think of it as. It really, if we can harness Saturn's energy, it makes us incredibly productive. It allows us to build structure and foundations upon which we can really evolve and grow from. Nothing exists without structure, right? That's why Saturn rules our bones, it rules our skeleton. Without our structure of our bones, we would just be, spineless amoebas. We wouldn't really be able to be the human beings that we are. We wouldn't be able to build all of the structure that we've created in our culture. So, get on the good side of Saturn here. This is a really interesting and powerful configuration, this air trine. So what can we do here? We can get structure to our relationships. We can find a way to have a little more communication based on communication. Remember, this is an air trine, so all of the air signs are being activated by this configuration. We've got Libra, Aquarius, Gemini, right? So we have the cardinal air, we have the fixed air, and we have the mutable air. A grand trine brings the power of that element, comes into intense focus. And when we're dealing with the air element, it's all about communication, it's about expression, it's about sharing ideas, information. And because the Sun Mars is what's triggering it, it really wants to relate to relationships. So it's a chance to use Saturn to get really much more grounded in our relationships and to pull some of that Aquarius energy, that progressive, that cooperative, that idealistic energy that Aquarius represents, right? Something future oriented. So really communicating or expressing our desires, our needs, our wants in relationship as it relates to the bigger picture, society in general, right? Aquarius tends to be that much broader socio-cultural perspective on things. So how are we relating to our peers, our peer groups, our community, right? The collective, society at large. There's a chance to really stabilize and enhance some of those relationship dynamics and be more expressive and communicative within those domains, right? Then we tie this back to the North Node in Gemini, and this is something we've been talking about all year. Saturn's been in trine with this node for most of 2021, a really great opportunity again to structure Saturn, our future North Node in Gemini, right? To articulate what is it that we want? What are we trying to grow towards? This is a great opportunity whenever we have the nodal axis transiting through these pairs of signs, as we have this with the Sag-Gemini axis. It's been a major theme of 2021. How do we get the wisdom from the past and pull it into our vision of the future and be able to articulate what it is we are trying to become? This is I feel like this is a time to get in right relationship with our future selves. Perfect opportunity here at the beginning of Libra season 2021 to really, because whatever you can articulate, whatever you can envision at this time has a really good chance of coming to fruition. So as always, when we're talking about the air element, journaling, writing, communicating, expressing, get those ideas and thoughts out on paper. Just that very process sometimes of journaling, of writing down your intentions. What do you want to do? Set some goals. Use Saturn. Saturn's great for setting goals. Give yourself a schedule, like whether it's just for the period of this month, maybe it's setting the tone for this next year, right? Give yourself some goals. Make them concrete. Make them realistic, right? Make them achievable. And articulate those. And certainly if it involves other people, if it's whether you want to change or enhance your personal relationships, your intimate partnerships, your business partnerships, your creative endeavors, your friendships, right? Really good chance to solidify those intentions and move them forward. Really use this energy to be a catalyst for growth and improvement in your life. So great start to the month. The other thing that seems really prevalent here, and I want to point to, and it's right there as we start, it's already in effect, is this powerful opposition between Venus in Scorpio and Uranus in Taurus, right? This is a mutually receptive energy, oppositions. And of course, Venus is very prominent. It's going to be moving through Scorpio for much of this Libra season. And of course, Venus is the ruler of Libra, so this is a very Venusian period in general, and at this time we're having Venus moving through that sign of Scorpio during this much of, at least the first half of this Libra season. So what are we getting here with this opposition? Well, you know, that Taurus-Scorpio axis is a power axis, right? And in particularly sexual power. As if we think about what Taurus represents, Taurus is as an earth sign and Venus ruled sign, okay? Taurus represents our own sort of embodied sexuality. It's the sensual nature. It's our human nature. Okay, sometimes we forget that we are biological creatures, and we are genetically programmed to sexually reproduce. So sex is in our very DNA. And so with Taurus, we are reminded of that fact. We are reminded and connected to our own bodily functions, our own sexuality, which is natural, which is because we are natural. We are part of nature. So our sexuality is a natural expression. Now, of course, this gets kind of clouded and confused by some of the many sexual distortions within our culture. Our Judeo-Christian culture, our Islamic culture, many cultures that we've inherited, and particularly in the West, have a really distorted view of sexuality. So there's this sort of guilt and repression and a feeling that we can't come into ownership of our own embodied sexuality. This configuration is an invitation to recall, remember, and re-embody with our natural sexual instincts, right? And that's what, you know, with the Uranus in Taurus, this sort of almost sudden and disruptive energy can be present. So what I'm seeing here with this configuration is sort of the potential for a very, I'm calling it an eruption of the erotic is sort of constellated with this configuration. Because when we think about, you know, Venus in Scorpio, and again, we're getting these energies where it's in its fall a little bit in Scorpio. Venus in its opposite sign from its own sign, Taurus. So whenever a planet is in a sign that's opposed to either its rulership, it's either in fall or detriment, just sort of by design. You know, and in ancient and, you know, Hellenistic astrology, some of these deterministic designations can bode very unpleasant things, right? Venus in Scorpio is connected to things like venereal diseases and, you know, sexuality that has consequences, shall we say. And that, of course, is, you know, we can see that, right? And because this is what's getting constellated by this configuration. Anytime Venus moves through Scorpio, we are going to be attracted, right? Mars has that, Scorpio has that magnetic sexual power and attraction, that fixed water sign. That's what gives Scorpio its power and intense sexual power. My apologies for probably the LAPD flying overhead in the helicopter. Speaking of power, intense power. Anyway, so, you know, when we have experienced this configuration of Venus moving through Scorpio, we're attracted to our darker sexual natures, right? We want to explore some of those deeper, sometimes taboo subjects around sex. It brings up the issues of like Kundalini energy. It brings up like Tantra, sex magic, things of that nature, like the dark, taboo side of sex. And so when you have a configuration like this with Uranus, which is also attracting us to the strange, to the unusual, to the unknown. This is a really powerful dynamic where we are likely going to be attracted to exploring our sexuality in much more deeper, intense ways with this configuration. And this is going to be in effect for, you know, about a week or so as we start this Libra season. So you may feel this compulsion to want to really just get into it with partners. You may find that people show up in your lives that are strange or foreign or different, very sudden. It's like, whew, all of a sudden this person that you're just magnetically attracted to, and it's just like, it can have that moth to the flame type of energy. You don't even know why. It's just this unconscious, compulsive, you know, energy that gets attracted. Or it could mean, if you're in a relationship, some intense exploration of your sexual life could be in store for you for this first week or two of Libra season. Now, of course, there's always the downside, and we talk about Venus being in its detriment in Scorpio. What is the shadow side of this configuration of these archetypes, right? When we get into exploring these deeper sexual realms, it requires, a great deal of self-sufficiency. That Taurus energy. Taurus is calling us to be self-sufficient, really grounded in our own sensuality, our own sexuality. If we're coming from a place of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, then we are stronger and able to then explore and to trust that other person. And that's a huge factor with Scorpio energy, is trust. Can I trust you? Because Scorpio and that depth of emotional connection with another person in terms of this sexual energy it makes us incredibly vulnerable, right? We're literally naked and so vulnerable in the presence of that other. That requires a great deal of trust. So, if you're being attracted to some of these intense sexual encounters this month, make sure it's someone you know and you trust. Because because this is really can be very sudden. We can be very impulsive under this configuration. So you may just find yourself in situations and attracted to environments or people or places that are very strange, very different, very new, right? And we may be a little out of our element, and we may feel this compulsion just to sort of let go and just go deep in. And so just a note of caution that when you're dealing with this energy, it's a very powerful energy. You want to be able to have a sense of self-sufficiency and a sense of trust in that other person. It's really key. All right. So moving on, the next thing I want to bring to your attention, I'm going to move the chart forward a couple days here. Let's erase all this stuff. And let's go forward to just a few days in on the 22nd, or I'm sorry, September the 24th. And here we want to take a look at another thing that's going to develop with this, as especially the first couple weeks, the first week for sure, it's starting to separate a little bit, but this Mars-Sun conjunction is going to kind of stay in effect for a while, because they're going to kind of moving together at a similar speed. And beginning on the 24th, we're going to see that this Mars-Sun conjunction is going to start to come into a pretty difficult opposition with Chiron over here in Aries. So what's going on with this? And of course, these oppositions are always two ways, right? And the thing that we always want to remember when we're considering oppositions is that they tend to show up and get resolved through our relationships. We tend to have a relational energy, right? So why we talk about opposites attract. Typically, this kind of energy shows up in relationships. Now, I think this configuration for me tends to show us maybe an uncovering or a encounter with childhood wounds or trauma, right? Because we got Chiron in Aries, which is the signature of a wound. I think it's a childhood wound, right? Something that happened to us very young. And it doesn't have to be something super traumatic, although it often is, whether it's a physical or sexual or emotional abuse that we may have suffered as children, or something that was not seemingly so transgressive, but really just our young, fragile egos were unable to handle and process, and it gets repressed and it gets thrown back in the unconscious, and it's something that can really nag at us throughout our adult lives. So when we see this configuration of Sun-Mars getting triggered and triggering that old wound, that could be coming up for us during the course of this transit. And again, with Mars a little uncomfortable in its detriment in Libra, it may show up in our current relationships, right? This past wound gets pulled into the present, and we might not recognize it because the wound is unconscious, right? And so we might not see that we're playing out old emotional patterns and bringing them, dragging them into our current relationships, Libra, and in an unconscious way. And so caution here is needed because Mars in Libra can bring out some aggression, some anger, some frustration. And especially triggered by this unconscious Chiron energy, that we could just be a little volatile, a little explosive. And we might not know that we're getting triggered by something that's much older. And with this Chiron in Aries, I think of not just like childhood trauma, but this can be bringing up past karmas from previous lives that are being recalled, remembered, and triggered by this configuration. So this is one of those kind of handle with care configurations that you just want to be aware of, because this energy could be volatile and it could affect your relationships, your intimate, your one-on-ones, your personal relationships could be jarred. Now, we also always want to remember with Chiron is, it's the wounded healer. So there's a couple of ways that Chiron tends to work through us, and we work through these wounds in our charts, right? One is that the one who is wounded becomes the one who wounds, right? And this gets into the issues of sort of like family intergenerational abuses and traumas, right? Just these things that get passed down from generation to generation, right? And we see this so often with physical, mental, emotional abuses, like the parent abuses the child learns that behavior, they have children, they're doing it, the grandparents did it, it's in our bloodline. And, we all inherit some trauma, some family trauma in the bloodline. It's just the way it is. And so what Chiron is giving us the chance to do is to heal that trauma, to take a conscious and self-aware approach of what is unconscious in that family dynamic, and to self-heal, right? We think of Chiron is our own inner shaman, right? And the shaman has magical powers, right? It's often isolated and sort of on the fringes of society, but it's the healing energy, it's a wisdom energy, and it's often self-generated, self-healing, very insightful energy when we're working with Chiron. So, this is maybe a chance, if we recognize some of these old patterns, some of these old wounds and traumas coming up for us during this month, good time to really work on some self-healing around that issue. And I'm always reminded that, our ancestors who have already passed and are beyond the veil, so to speak, they're actually rooting for us to actually work through some of these traumas and heal. Because if we can be the one who heals and solves the trauma and releases it, then that healing echoes back through the bloodline, and actually the ancestors beyond the veil get the benefit of that healing as well. It releases them from the karma that they're still carrying in the afterlife. So kind of it's a real heady kind of a concept, but something that's really powerfully configured by this opposition that we're experiencing this month. So this is one of those things. You get these sort of, every so often, these transits trigger this kind of upset, but also this opportunity. It's always an opportunity to heal whenever we get Chiron involved in the mix. So, the wounded healer, right? The wounded warrior becomes the healer, right? And that Mars warrior energy. There's a real energy for healing here, real active, something that we can actively participate in relationship, in dialogue. I also think about Libra is also, to me, it's the sign of the therapy session, right? That one-on-one relationship we have with a therapist is a very Libra energy, right? So if you're going through your own, psychotherapy technologies, if you're in analysis of some sort, this could be a great period of time to really get at that and really heal that trauma that may be holding you back, right? I've always thought about this innocence and this naivete when we're dealing with Aries and Chiron. And hello, LPD. Thank you. Sorry about that. Just wait for that to pass. But with Chiron and Aries, I always think of the famous quote from Jesus where he says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." To me, that's a quintessential Chiron and Aries type of sentiment, right? Because Aries is that innocence. It's a naivete. And a lot of times with this, this inherited familial type of trauma, it's unconscious. It's like they don't know what they're doing. And so forgiveness becomes a huge way of healing that's necessary. You have to forgive and let go in order to get the healing nature. So something to consider as we look at this configuration. All right, let's move on here. The very next day, I'm just going to move the chart forward to the 25th and highlight a particularly, what we're going to get to here. Oh, the trine, yes. So, as I said, Venus very prominent in the sky, a lot of important aspects. So right after while it's still in effect, this opposition we just talked about with Venus and Scorpio, opposite Mars, or opposite Uranus and Taurus, we next get a nice trine aspect with Venus in Scorpio, trining that watery Neptune in Pisces. So this is a shift in that energy, and it's concurrent. So, these are sort of overlapping. So that sexual intensity, that Kundalini energy we just talked about with that opposition, now Venus is coming into this much more harmonious and gentle trine relationship with Neptune over in Pisces, right? So now we've got a water trine, right? The emotional nature. And really this is like, to me, this is the signature of like making love with the divine. It's like we're going to have this sense of the sacred sexuality, as if, it's like making love to the gods or the goddesses, right? And in some ways realizing that we are the gods, we are the goddesses. This sense of our own divinity is sort of implied by this configuration, which is really, really beautiful. And again, that air trine still in effect. So all these pieces are continuing and kind of building on themselves as we work our way through this first week of Libra season. There's a lot going on. And it's involving our emotional nature. It's involving our relational nature. We're really being called to deeply connect with our others and to elevate our relationships, elevate our sexuality, our sensuality, and now bringing it up to the level of the divine, of the cosmic, of the transcendental. Right? This is the signature of ecstasy, true ecstasy, like just that feeling of dissolving boundaries, of letting go of the ego, right? Letting go of the self-analysis, the inner dialogue, right? Anytime we're in our ego mind, we're either focusing on past or future things. The ego, and it serves a great purpose. Don't get me wrong. We're indebted to our ego, so I don't want to give it a totally bad rep, but it does take us out of the now. It takes us out of the present moment. And so we want to have these opportunities, and we get these glimpses, these flashes, right? These momentary moments of bliss, whether it's one of the, in deep in meditation, or, on a long walk in nature, or, the moment of orgasm with our partners, with our lovers, right? We get those just like the moments of just pure bliss, where we're just, that's the connection to the divine. That's Neptune and Pisces. So with this Venus and Scorpio, all this, right, this intense sexual energy and attraction to exploring the depth. And we talked about like Kundalini. We talked about Tantra, like sacred sexuality. This is a really interesting period to really touch the touch God, touch the divine, touch the infinite ocean of oneness, and realize we are one. Like, it's an old saying in my Kundalini tradition of yoga. It's like God and me and God are one. And so this is an opportunity to know that in a very profound and personal, interpersonal, transpersonal. All three of those levels are getting triggered and presented. It's like an opportunity to really explore in a deep and meaningful way. I'm calling it, so surrendering into love, right? That's what Neptune and Pisces is asking us. It's asking for total surrender. You have to let go, right? And in that surrender, in that letting go, that is where the beauty, that's where the joy is, that's where the bliss is, that's where the ecstasy is. And so Venus and Scorpio, Neptune and Pisces, really nice, harmonious, resonant energy for that kind of experience, transcendental experiences. Okay, as I said, Venus is really active this month, and it keeps making these aspects. So I'm just going to move forward one more day, and again, we see that Venus now is coming into square with Jupiter in Aquarius, retrograde Jupiter. So now it's like just this big love. What do I call this here? Yeah. The emotional desire nature conflicting with our intellectual ideals. That's a good way of expressing this, right? Because you've got Venus in Scorpio. It's very emotional, right? Whereas that Jupiter in Aquarius is very high-minded and idealistic, right? We're trying to really integrate our biggest hopes and dreams, our expression of the future. It's a very future-oriented time. But this is just another intense contact that Venus is making this month with the outer planets, right? So we've got Uranus energy. Now it's trying to bring in that Neptune energy, and now we've got Jupiter, right? In 3 different signs, all coming into this intense Scorpio Venus, which is, as again, it's in detriment. So it's like it could bring up some difficulties with our ideas about our sexuality, with our ideas about our relationships. Are we getting enough emotional stimulation? Is it deep enough? We really are being called for depth of emotion. And here, this square with Jupiter, it's like there could be other interests that are in conflict with the emotional, with the relational. Our jobs, our commitments to our society, our commitments to our community, just our own intellectual pursuits. Like, can we harmonize? Can we find ways to fuse those sometimes divergent energies, right? Because that's what we're getting with a square. We're getting 2 elements that aren't simpatico. We're getting earth, or we're getting water, I should say, and air. And they're both fixed. These are fixed energies. So that square, that's where you get resolution oftentimes with square energies, is through the mode, right? So these 2 fixed signs, can we find a way to create some structure within these 2 archetypes? That's the challenge here. Next, we want to always talk about, we are going to get Mercury is going to station retrograde on September 27th. So we always want to be aware of when Mercury goes retrograde, because we all are aware of what kind of havoc it can wreak on our communication and just on life in general. So this is the 3rd and final Mercury retrograde of 2021, and it's going to take place all throughout the next few weeks. What do we got? From the 27th through October 18th. So pretty much from then until the rest of this Libra season, Mercury will be retrograding through these degrees of Libra. Eventually it's going to retrograde and come into contact with both Mars and the Sun in Libra. So early in this month, chance for a lot of good communication and connection, all that great air trine energy. We want to do that early, because now once Mercury goes retrograde, there's going to be less facility with communicating with flow of information and ideas. So that's something you just want to set your clock for. So anything in terms of making contracts or any commitments that you need to make, travel plans, make sure to do those before the 27th, and ideally even before it goes into shadow, which is, it's going to start going into shadow. It's already in shadow, I think, actually. So anyway, plan for that. Be aware that now with Mercury retrograde in Libra, miscommunications in relationships. We want to be very careful about how we language in dialogue interpersonally, right? And even with partners, this can show up in the workplace. This isn't just in your intimate relationships. We can see this in family and friends and colleagues and co-workers. Mercury retrograde in the sign of air, in a relational sign, and a cardinal sign, we can get a little too aggressive with our ideas, with our language. So we want to be careful of that. We've already talked about Mars being in Libra here with the Sun, and as that retrograde period progresses, I can step through. You can start to see that as we move through the rest of the month, right? All of this is starting to converge. So by early October, they're going to come into relationship. The new moon that's coming up in Libra, it's going to be pretty intense in terms of relationships as we move into the second half of Libra season. Very, very intense. It's going to be an intense new moon, as you can see. We can talk about that now. It's essentially October 6th. We look at what's going on here. It's just a huge stellium in Libra, right? So Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, right? So and Mercury being retrograde here. What's going on? So we want to definitely set some intentions and really be really conscious about what's going on with our relationships, with our partnerships, with our alliances, with our agreements, issues around compromise, and issues around fairness and balance and equity, right? We want to be particularly diplomatic during this new moon, right? Because that's what's being called, right? And so, and again, Mars in detriment could be a little aggressive here, could be issues of frustration, anger, sometimes violence, right? So we want to be really cognizant of how we're relating, how we're speaking, how we're communicating, how we're showing up in our relationships, because you don't want this tinderbox. And something else that's really interesting with this configuration, you can see it's kind of a yod going on here, what we would call the finger of God, because this whole stellium is coming into somewhat of an inconjunct with both Uranus and Neptune. And this can just be challenges with the collective, right? This is a very personal, relational side of things, with all these personal planets gathered in one side of the zodiac and opposing these two very powerful transpersonal energies. And what are we getting? We're getting an air. We're getting cardinal air, which has nothing in common with either fixed earth or with mutable water, right? So all three of the elements are incomplementary, and the modes aren't hooking up. That's what inconjuncts create. They create that, call them the itch you can't scratch, right? It's just, there's like the pebble in your shoe, right? You just can't get it out. You just have to grin and bear it and walk and ignore it in some ways. But this could be a really challenging configuration during this new moon, where some of the things in the culture are just hard to integrate for us, like Uranus and Taurus, just tough, and some sudden disruptions in, I could see this being a disruption to something big in the economy or the stock market, like Uranus and Taurus, and we've been talking about that all year, is a symbol for disruption to the value system, disruption to the money supply. And then with Neptune and Pisces, like with this configuration, you might see the shadow side of that as well, which is like the end of the dream, like being deluded and illusionary, like getting duped, right? Believing in something, being addicted, going overboard, losing your sense of self, right? This is a really challenging configuration here. So I'd expect this first week of October, there's some intensity to be developing. You know, you also have Venus coming into alignment with the nodal axis. This is the end of this opportunity that we've been talking about all year with the nodes of the moon, you know, moving through this Gemini Sagittarius polarity. You know, late in the end of the year, by the beginning of 2022, they're going to be moving into the Taurus Scorpio axis, and it's going to be a major shift in tone for 2023. Right, we're coming from this very air, fire, very upward, a lot of idealistic, levitational energy. We're going to feel a much heavier tone as we move to 2023 when that axis shifts into Scorpio and Taurus. Intense, right? Some of the things we just talked about with that Venus opposition, those kind of energies. So last chances to really find and harmonize this relationship we've been having with Venus coming into conjunction with the South Node, and it's going to move into and change signs there. When is that going to happen? Yeah, the very next day on October 7th, we see that Venus makes its ingression into Sag. So that'll be a nice shift, some of that emotional intensity. If we can have done the deep work, if we had a chance to really explore whether it's, you know, sexual or our spirituality or a sacredness of embodiment that Venus and Scorpio is calling us to do, then when it moves into Sagittarius and moves through that for the next month, we get to integrate that. Whatever we went deep in Scorpio, you bring it with you and up into the light of Sagittarius, and it changes us. We get to mutate that fixed energy and really sort of develop a new sort of outlook, a new philosophy, a new way of seeing and being in the world, right? There's an elevated sense that Sagittarius brings. And so with Venus conjuncting the South Node, again, the gift of the past, what is that wisdom? What is that ancient or traditional or just from our own personal past? The gift that South Node and Sag is bringing forth and projecting into the future with Gemini, the new ideas, the new visions, right? Really intense, not really intense, actually, just a real opportunity, I feel like to beautify our intentions, to really have this aesthetic sense of what we are trying to become, what our future self is, right? Venus is beautifying that vision. Right, so again, a time for really artistic expressions, right? Whether you write or you create photography or poetry or music, anything that's really, you know, beautiful, artistic, expressive is a good way of channeling that energy and figuring it out. Like, what is it that we're moving towards? Something also happening during that week, during this few days, is that Pluto is going to be stationing direct. So it's going to end its retrograde period, and the first of all the outer planets to shift from retrograde direct. So may expect that Pluto Cap energy to become more prevalent again. All these things that we're dealing with the infrastructure bill, all of the focus on institutional issues, are probably going to start to gain traction again. This retrograde period, we've been kind of going over it, so I would expect certainly that infrastructure stuff to really start getting some traction and hopefully making a difference. We don't have a lot more time, another year and a half of this Pluto Capricorn transit, where we really got to figure out some of these bigger problems. If we don't handle them, there are some, we're heading for the potential for catastrophe across society and across civilization. So I'm hoping we can start to solve some of these bigger problems. What else do we have here? There's a lot going on. Let's see, October 9th, I have a note as being particularly important. What's going on? Another yod? Yeah, look at that. So again, it's just an intensification of what we talked about with that full moon, or that new moon in Libra with that yod. Here we've got it really tightly with all three. The moon has moved on here, but look at exact conjunction of Sun, oops, wrong tool. Wrong tool. Come on. Thank you. Right? This big stellium here. Exact 16 degrees Taurus. Right? Hitting both Uranus and Neptune. So again, that energy is just having a hard time manifesting. Even though it's really an intensity in our relationships, something about the outside influence is going to be difficult to integrate. We're going to be challenged to find that balance between our personal lives and our personal relationships and our connection to society, our connection to the collective, to the social. And then you're going to get all that Sag energy with the moon now coming with Venus. We're getting energizing this other configuration that we've been talking about all year, as Saturn has been in this really harmonious relationship with the nodal axis. But now we're getting this really strong configuration with the moon and Venus sort of energizing, harmonizing, feminizing, beautifying that nodal axis. And again, this is another chance to really tap into the powerful, proactive side of Saturn. Set some real good goals. Set some limits and some boundaries. Build something foundational. Add some structure to your life. And to your goals and your plans as a really good opportunity to really set our compasses for the next year. Right? What do you want to accomplish in the next year? Really set your intention. And then as we just sort of wind down and we talk about the ends of retrograde season, by the October 18th, so moving forward quite a bit, but then we're going to get Jupiter stationing direct in Aquarius, which is will be another big shift. And I've been connecting Jupiter's transit through Aquarius. It seems to have correlated really tightly with the vaccine rollouts. So as it moved in, we had the vaccines and the breakthroughs, and we were, as the coronavirus was also expanding. But this idea of technology and of this future medical treatment that had such great promise. And then as it went retrograde, it started to be, we're realizing, was it good enough for the Delta and booster shots? I'm hoping that with this transit now, once it finishes up its time in Aquarius, I think a lot of this stuff will have sorted itself out. We'll know a little bit more about the efficacy, how to move forward. And I think a lot of us are really looking forward to 2022 when Jupiter then moves through the sign of Pisces, where it's exalted, and we get a much more enjoyable, emotionally exuberant period. We get out of this, it's been very tense and very technical, the scientific versus the emotional. It's been a very sometimes irrational period for us as we try to navigate all of these very complex societal problems that the coronavirus has brought out to us, the issues of vaccination, issues of freedom, personal rights, a lot of stuff being stirred up by, I think, this particular transit. And it's not going to go away because we're still going to have Saturn moving through Aquarius for all of 2023 and even into 2024. So we're not out of the woods on all this stuff. We really need to figure out, and Saturn will force us to focus on making solutions to a lot of these societal problems that we're dealing with around these issues. But I think that should pretty much covers everything. When we get into the beginning of Scorpio season, which we'll talk about next month, the Saturn-Uranus square is coming back into effect. We've had a little bit of a reprise from that intensity over the course of the last month because of the retrogradation, they've sort of moved out of aspect. But starting in mid-October and going through the end of the year, that square is now going to come back into a much tighter aspect. So I would expect this third and final, I think it's the last exact square that we'll get with this configuration. There's something rather intense that's going to probably come to a culmination point in terms of that energy that we've been working in. We'll talk more about that next month. So, all right, hopefully that was helpful for you. Hopefully you get a chance to sort of set your calendars a little bit for what's coming this month. Prepare for this astrological weather, as we like to do with each of these sessions. As always, if this information is helpful for you, if you've gotten something out of it, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps me, sort of grow this channel. I really would like this to become something that's more substantial and reach out to more people and share this information. I think it's helpful. Hit that notification bell as well so you know when my new videos come out. As always, I'm grateful for the time and your attention. I know you have a lot of distractions and a lot of options when it comes to what you can spend your time on. So I always value it when you choose to spend it here, learning about ourselves and our place in the world through this amazing tool of astrology. All right, until next time, Sat Nam, everyone.